Today's show is sponsored by the ABV Barrel Shop. The ABV Barrel Shop is located in the St. Louis metro community of Arnold, Missouri, and is the world's first single barrel only liquor store. This store is owned and operated by Steve Akeley and Jim Fosnot. Get signed up for their email distribution list to find out when the store will be opening, what their hours will be, and most importantly, what they will have in inventory at abvbarrelshop.com. We are also sponsored by The Bar to Go. The Bar to Go offers a fully customizable carrying case that allows you to take your favorite distilled spirits or cocktail ingredients with you. Whether you're looking for yourself, a customized gift, or logo items for your business or event, The Bar to Go can help. Check them out at thebartogo.com. Use the number 2 when you type out The Bar to Go. Did you know Neely Family Distillery now ships its popular distilled spirits directly to you? To order, simply call 859-394-3258. Tell them the ABV Network sent you. And now, on to the show.
Let's drink!
Welcome to the Bourbon Daily, the podcast about everything bourbon delivered to you every day of the week. Today on the show, we discuss the book, Make It a Double with author Shelley Sackier. My name is McNew. Please join me in welcoming my co-host, Steve Akeley, along with our special guest, Shelley Sackier.
Hey, Shelley, what's up?
Hey, guys. It's so nice to be on the show today. And, this is a real pleasure for me. I think your show is incredibly charming and so informative. So what a pleasure. What an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we like to mix education and fun. So it's for us, it works. It's a good combination.
Yeah, we have a word for that in my house with both my kids absolutely detested it, but I thought it fit perfectly. It's edutainment.
Edutainment. Okay. Yeah, we may have to start using that, right, McNew? Yeah. Very cool. Well, Shelley, we want to talk about your book, and McNew here has read it, so that's kind of a cool thing. And so she's got some questions for you based on there you go. She's got her copy there. And but before we get to that, it's always important, at least for me and the way I feel, that our audience has to get to know our guests on a personal basis. So if you don't mind, the first question is as simple as that. It's also as big as that. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I was born and somewhat raised in the Midwest in Wisconsin,
okay,
where, all great distillers are born and raised. And I grew up in farm country and absolutely loved that whole feeling of camaraderie, of just, real gentle folk with very acerbic senses of humor. And, if I could make an analogy of my lifestyle, of my whole life growing up there, if you've ever listened to the Prairie Home Companion, mm-hmm. That is my life. Those are my people. Those are all the experiences that I have grown up with. And it was a terrific, very small hometown feel. There were probably about 800 or 900 people in my town. And, the second anybody leaves or sneezes, it makes the town crier come to life. So it was, cloistered and village-like, and I thought it was great. And then at about 15 or so, I left home and went out on the road with the first career of my life, which was in the entertainment business. So I was a singer for big band swing orchestras, and
cool.
Bunch of very old time folk who taught me everything that I knew about great jazz and swing music. So I toured with a bunch of the guys from Harry James's orchestra and Frank Sinatra's orchestras. And, it was, these people were my mentors. They were my substitute parents, and sort of did the rest of the raising and educating me on the road when I wasn't in school. And from there, I got married very early at around 22 and to a British man. And he had family back in the UK. And so we were constantly traveling back and forth. And the first time that we went there, he took me to Scotland, where I had my very first interaction with Scotch. And I basically became the female doppelganger of the green Mr. Yuck sticker that we put on all poisonous liquids beneath our cabinets for our children not to touch. But I thought it was just foul. I thought it was horrid. I could not believe that people would actually put this poison in their body. It had needlessly dirtied a previously clean glass. And I was just astonished that, that this was a thing that people craved. And it just happened to be that particular evening, we were staying in this beautiful country house hotel called Balbirnie House, just outside of Edinburgh. And the barkeep came up to us and said, would you like to have a dram before dinner? And, my husband, ex-husband now, but husband at the time, made a terrible face at the barkeep and said, do not waste your precious liquid on this woman. She has no tongue for it whatsoever. And the barkeep was super surprised and said, what did you give her? And my ex-husband said, I gave her a dram of Oban, and she acted like I'd given her poison. And the barkeep, clutched his chest and reeled back, and he's like, you did. How could you do that? You can't start somebody, who has no experience with Scotch on that end of the spectrum. So this was my first experience learning that there is a spectrum of flavor and aroma profiles within brown spirits. And, I had categorized what I had initially tasted as, this must be what everything tastes like. No, thank you ever again. And he said, let me just give you a try. Let me show you the introductory malt, so that a lady's malt, that's what he called it. And at the time, I certainly didn't take offense to it. He was like, it's going to be creamy and biscuity and notes of dessert-like flavors, vanillas and custards. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, please. Right. No umbrella needed. I'm totally fine. So he brought this over. I had my first sip, and it did not suck. It was really surprising as to what a difference that flavor made in my mouth and in my head and my whole perception. And then for the next 25 years, I traveled back and forth to Scotland, falling in love with the country, with the people, the culture, the mythology, and of course, all the stories with the distilleries and the people who ran them, and the great yarns that everyone spun, and that in and of itself just created a magical moment within that drink itself, and it just sort of sewn itself to the drink, and it's sewn itself to my soul. And I fell in love with it bit by bit, but because of one person's patience and enthusiasm, and because all of my future experiences were paired with all of those really critical things, it changed my mind entirely about something that ended up becoming my career. It's nice. A very pivotal moment.
Yeah. Well, any other hobbies, interest outside of whiskey? Anything else that you like to do?
Yeah, well, I used to be a musician. I reached mediocrity, and then I just sort of firmly stayed there. I did a lot of touring, which was great fun, and recorded some stuff with some incredibly amazing people. I worked on film scores and
really,
and did album work. It was really lovely, but. And I was trained classically as a violinist and as an opera singer. So all that stuff was like a whole different chapter of my first half of my life, and not really recognizing the fact that it was sort of preparing me for a life where I was going to be interacting with a lot of other people and trying to sell them by presenting something that would be enticing and exciting. So that entertainment industry has helped me with what it is that I do today. And I no longer perform in public. And I think the public thanks me for that. But I've spawned 2 children who are professional musicians as well. So, that did not go to waste. And then I love cooking. I think I don't know too many people in the world who don't love to eat, especially if it's really great food. And my whole family are just serious competitive chefs, of the CIA level training, and caterers and butchers. And so, when we're all together, it is a mass of elbows looking for room in the kitchen, and, everyone shouting that their dish is far superior to the others. And it's competitive, but very, belly filling.
Yeah. If I brought a violin out and set it down in front of you, could you play it still? Is it something that you always have, like riding a bike, or is it something you lose when you don't?
No, well, with any skill, one does need to repetitively practice it in order to achieve some level of ability. But yes, there is something called muscle memory.
Okay.
So, I have my violin sitting out on my kitchen table. I have my piano always open and available. I have a lot of different instruments, guitars and an oboe, all those things that are just within arm's reach, because when I'm writing or when I'm working, sometimes you need a mental break. And I think music is such a great way to become creative in a different way and to become inspirational in a different way. So you take a break,
I agree.
Not that I believe in the left and right side of the brain, but I think there's some truth to it there.
If we were visiting you and we were doing this interview in person, we're doing it over Zoom, but if we were doing it in person, McNew and I showed up and you hadn't told us any of that story, but then you broke out a violin and started playing it. To me, that's, not knowing that you're a musician, it's almost like you're doing a magic trick at that point. I mean, that's such a great skill. It's just awesome. Yeah.
I think so too. I think, you would probably not find my skills so great, but I definitely think.
I think I would be amazed. No way. If you could play the thing at all. It's
like completely out of key. I wouldn't know.
It's just like another language. My mom was a music teacher, a violin teacher for her, as long as I can remember, my whole life. And the rule in our house was that you only practice on the days that you eat. And so because I can't remember not having an instrument and practicing all the time, it was just sort of like, you brush your teeth, right? Twice a day. Well, you practice all your instruments at least once a day. And their mindset of music was, it's not that we're trying to make you all become professional musicians, the kids in my family, but rather this is a vehicle that we're going to use in order to teach you a discipline that you can apply to anything in your life. If you just touch that one thing every day, 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 2 or 4 hours, however long you're invested in it, you are going to become a little bit better. And so that was what they said. Apply it to tennis or mathematics or, landing a car on another planet. It doesn't matter. It's all relative. You just have to pay attention to something every day if you want to gain a skill to it.
Yeah. McNew, what do you want to know before we take a break and start talking about the book? What do you want to know on a personal basis?
Gosh, you have just such a full life full of interesting hobbies and stuff you can do. It's amazing. Do you ever actually take a break and take a vacation? Where do you go?
Yeah. So I've had 2 vacations in the last 4 years, and much of that is due to the fact that COVID, I'm very much a rule follower. And about 2 years ago, my daughter, who's now 26, she called me up on Zoom. She lives in Pasadena in California, and called me up on Zoom, and she's like, I think you should have gotten a box from me today as a present. And she's like, I'd like you to open that while we're on Zoom together. And I did. And it was a book of Charles Darwin and, the evolution book. And I said, what is this for? And she's like, well, to preface, my daughter works for JPL for NASA, and she was part of the EDL team that landed Perseverance on Mars. And she said, I just want to thank you for everything that you did in order to help me become this person who's now engaged in doing something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to be, a person sending shit up to space. And that is an actual true statement. The first word was airplane. So he said, I might not be able to take you to Mars, but I can take you to where life was first discovered and studied on our planet. And so she took me to the Galapagos, and it was just the 2 of us there for 10 days and following in Darwin's footsteps. It was just absolutely amazing, truly amazing. Best trip ever. And then just last month, I went to Italy with only one purpose, intent, and that was for 7 days to eat my body weight in pasta. And I succeeded. It's good.
All right. Well, good stuff, guys. Nice to get to know you a little bit, Shelley. And what we'll do next, we'll take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about your book, Make It a Double. We'll do that just for you.
Okay, thanks.
talk about the people who make these shows happen. First up is the ABV Barrel Shop. The ABV Barrel Shop is owned and operated by Steve Akeley and Jim Fosnot in the greater St. Louis area. It is the most unique shopping experience in the world of bourbon, as the ABV Barrel Shop only focuses on single barrels. We aren't open just yet, but our plan is to have the most diverse single barrel offerings from our many friends in the world of bourbon. By signing up for a weekly email, you will know our entire inventory we have on hand. In addition to single barrels, we'll have a tasting bar and a gift shop featuring logo merchandise for both the shop and the ABV network, as well as a full curriculum of bourbon education classes. Additionally, we'll use the gift shop to feature products from our partners in the world of bourbon, companies like Art Eatable Chocolates and Old Man Bay Signs. Head over to ABV Barrel Shop to sign up for our email and text distribution list so you can stay in the know. Hi, this is Steve Akeley, owner of the ABV Network. We're sponsored by the Stave and Thief Society. This is where you, a bourbon enthusiast, can expand your knowledge and emerge a bourbon steward. In 2017, I completed my Executive Bourbon Steward certification. It's the most comprehensive bourbon certification program available and connects you with an expansive network of bourbon enthusiasts and professionals. Check out the full listing of in-person and online certifications and join the society today by enrolling at staveandthief.com. Okay, let's talk about Neely Family Distillery. In 2018, I met Royce Neely at an industry event. He started appearing on our shows, and we became friends during my frequent visits to Kentucky. Today, he's leading the way for young distillers making their mark on the bourbon industry. A visit to Neely Family Distillery combines family history, a look at what makes their products unique, and of course, a tasting through their whiskeys, moonshines, and creams. Check them out at NeelyFamilyDistillery.com and visit them in Sparta, Kentucky.
This is Kathy Cool, and you are listening to the Bourbon Daily.
Welcome back to the Bourbon Daily. Today we have Shelley Sackier, and we're talking about her book, Make It a Double.
Yes, we are. So Shelley, McNew's got a lot of questions because she has reviewed this book. She's read it, and she's got some specific questions on that. But I'm going to kick this thing off just for the audience and myself. Give us an idea of what the book, kind of give us a synopsis of it.
Well, this is a story that it feels like I've always been working on this book. For the last 2 decades, I realized that I was going through this enormous transformation where I had a very bad first handshake with brown spirits when I was, 22 years old. And it was a noxious to my body kind of response to it. And because of the patience and the kindness and enthusiasm of one individual who didn't know me from Adam, but thought, I'm going to try and change your mind. And because I had all those beautiful next experiences with whiskey, paired with traveling all around Scotland and meeting all the people who made the whiskeys and who told stories about, every component that goes along with making it, it fully changed my mind 180 degrees from, thinking this was something I would never touch again to something where it became the thing I pursued every day until it actually became my career. And I think for me, it reminds me that I have to sometimes take a step back, that we as a human race have to sometimes take a step back from the very, very firm foundations that we find ourselves digging our heels into. Like, at this moment, we're a very, very divisive globe where we find ourselves on one end of a spectrum or another of like, I'm for this team or for that team, whatever it is, politics or our nations, our thoughts and beliefs. And when I find myself so entrenched in some sort of mindset, I think I remember back to having my mind changed, and that blows my mind that I can go from, zero to hero in such a short amount of time. But that only happens if one is willing to open up and embrace new experiences and listen to people that you've never heard before and never met and don't have any connection to, just to kind of take in new data, take in new information that might somehow sway you. And I recognized that there was a rewiring of my brain happening, and I wanted to track that process because it was just really important to me. It's not like I started off and thought, oh, I'm going to make a book out of this, because I certainly never thought I was going to be working in the position that I am today at that time, where I thought, I'm going to write about this. I had a blog, and I thought I wanted to share this with some of my friends who obviously knew that I was not a brown spirits kind of a person. and it was a fun way to practice my writing skill, because I was working as a writer at the time, an author. And it was also an opportunity to prove to myself that I was open and willing to try new things. So that is, in a nutshell, sort of, what the book is about, transformation. And it's not just necessarily me, it's like taking the, this is like the human experience, right? So it goes from the transcendental to the particular, but it's much, much larger than just my story. It's everybody's story.
All right. McNew, and you read it, so tell us a little bit about your thoughts of it, and then what questions do you have for Shelley about the book?
Yeah, so I thought it was fun to read. Like you said, you were just keeping track of things, and I really thought it read like a diary, like one's drinking journal. So I thought that was a fun way to read it, and I loved it.
Thank you.
So for newbies, would you recommend them going the same route that you went, starting with Scotch before they get into bourbons or rye? Because I think a lot of people start the opposite way. But what advice would you give them if their first brown spirit was a Scotch?
Well, to answer the first part of that question, I would be like, I think it's a little bit more based on what's available to you.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't necessarily have to be brown spirits. It can just be, any spirit, or when I teach my classes to people, I do nosing and tasting, and I try to make it as broad as I possibly can, so that even if a person says, no, thank you, I had, too much brown spirit in my high school or college days, whatever, that at least they would apply it to something else that they did find favorable to their palate. So I think that there are ways to make that initial handshake with a spirit to be less egregious and less offensive, less scary, and more like a learning experience, and sort of an experiential type thing, that you're playing a little bit with science, you're playing a little bit with sensory, you're learning a little bit of biology about yourself, your sense of smell, your sense of taste, and how flavor is created. So I would say that I have 4 very easy lessons for people, and we've put it up on YouTube, so that people can learn how to nose and taste any spirit, to make it a really fun, very quick, enjoyable experience that they can apply to everything else that they taste from there on.
Yeah, that makes sense. So your first distillery tour was Bourbon, and my first was Maker's Mark. It's still very special to me. Like, you can go to 100 different distilleries, you still think about the first one. So what were some of your favorite things or favorite memories about your first distillery?
Oh, I definitely have to say, hands down, the way that it smelled. I think if I could go back in time and go back to school, I would be studying food science, and specifically perfumery, just because I think the whole the study of the biology of what happens in our heads, specifically with the oral cavity, nasal cavity, inside your brain, the neuroreceptors that are all lighting up as you are smelling or tasting different things. That to me was the thing that was most a visceral response, was walking into that distillery and being like, where are all these smells coming from? What is creating this scent? I want to find that pot. I want to put my head inside that vessel. And the tasting part came later, but it was definitely all the sensory experiences. And then of course, one of the most common things I think for a lot of people to fall in love with walking into a distillery is seeing those all incredible, beautiful copper pots, just gleaming and shiny, and belching out heat. And to me, that is a sight to behold. That is just magnificent, absolutely magnificent.
Yep.
So do you have a similar experience with yourself in Maker's Mark?
So going in, just the smells of a distillery or a rick house, I'm like, I wish I could just bottle that smell and take it home with me, because it's so fantastic, and you're right, it just immerses you in. You can. Yeah, it's immersive. It's a whole just otherworldly experience sometimes.
Now, why are they not making more whiskey perfumes and soaps for women? I've There's one little tiny place on Isla. It's a tiny little soap manufacturer. This beautiful woman who just creates soaps that little parts of the distilleries. They give to her all these different parts of the distillery, and she makes them into the scents of her soaps. And and you can take home the scent of that distillery. I love that idea. I think more people should be doing that.
Oh, more people would buy it if we knew it was available. We would.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a couple chapters in the book about Burns Night, which I think is interesting, specifically your first time celebrating that. Is that still something you celebrate each year?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, my partner has a brand new kilt he's been wearing for the last couple of years, which is truly spectacular because, it is a whole rigmarole to get into that thing. And if you've got the whole kit and caboodle, then, it's a couple of hours of labor, the labor of love of putting yourself into a kilt. But boy, oh boy, once you're in a room full of Scotsmen and Scotswomen and the music, the bagpipes, the food and all the poetry, the bawdiness of it and the great whiskey. It's an event unlike anything I've ever attended before. And I want to, I live for that moment. And it's a perfect time of the year where it comes at the end of January, where Christmas is over, the holidays are over, New Year's is over, and everyone's sort of like, oh, what do we have to live for? And I'm like, oh, Burns Night.
Yeah, exciting. I love that idea. It's it's fun. I haven't celebrated, but I've seen photos of people and that looks like an absolute blast.
It is, and it doesn't have to be
where you need something fun.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be Scotch oriented or anything. We've done them here with bourbons, at our distillery, and they've gone just as beautifully. It doesn't matter. It's about the camaraderie and the joyfulness of bringing some warmth into a very, very cold season. Yeah,
absolutely. Later on in the Belly Up to the Bar chapters, you were very adamant that you wouldn't like bourbon because you found it too sweet. So do you still prefer Scotch to bourbon now that you work in a bourbon distillery?
Let me look around and see if anyone's listening. So it's funny because McNew, I'd have to say that the parallels of my first taste with single malt Scotch and my first taste with American whiskeys were almost identical, where I recognized that this just didn't fit me, right? I just felt like it wasn't a good match. And I made a very immediate and very definitive statement about, no, thank you, I don't like that. And so the barkeep made a specific point in Scotland to say, well, let me see if I can't change your mind by introducing you to something different that still falls under that umbrella. When the same thing happened here at Reservoir, when I walked in, for the first time, I was walking in as an author who was researching something for a book I was writing. And it was, had to do with a lot of American whiskeys. And I wanted to make sure that although I understood Scotch production, I wasn't 100% certain on some of the alternative American manufacturing processes. And so I needed to talk to the distiller, and it so happened that the distiller was also the owner as well. And the two of us got to talking, and he's like, "You're writing books for kids, and you're writing about whiskey?" And I said, "No, this one is actually an adult book, and that is not a euphemism for porn." And so he said, "Well, I'm happy to tell you whatever you know, but it seems you know everything." And I said, "Well, before we go into how you're making American whiskeys, I have to tell you, I just don't like bourbon." And he grabbed 3 glasses, put them on the bar in front of us, and he said, "Right, you've laid down the gauntlet. I'm up for the challenge." And from that moment, he took it upon himself to educate me about the American whiskey making process, the ingredients, and how things differed and how they were the same for making single malts and Scotch in Scotland. And again, it was simply because someone had the patience and the enthusiasm behind something that they loved and they wanted to share that. That's what changed my mind. So yes, at this point, I have lots and lots of different bourbons and ryes and wheats that I adore. It's still really early on for me, I think, in my exploration of those. So I'm very, very open-minded to trying all sorts of new things, but there's a lot that I come across that I'm super surprised at. Specifically, I find I tend to lean toward rye a little bit more because they are a little bit more like some of the single malt scotches that I have sewn to my soul.
That makes a lot of sense. So this distillery you walked into, you work there now as the director of distillery education. What's your favorite part about your job?
Oh, my favorite part about my job is all of the research that I get to do, the research and development with our products. And it's specifically more science-based. And since I am not a scientist or an engineer or a chemist or a yeast biologist or anything like that, I'm constantly cold calling people who are experts in their field in order to say, look, this is something I have to understand for all of our team members, all the people who work on the production room floor. And it's also something that I have to then relate to everyone, not just our employees, but also our public, as far as how do we make sense of something that's really complex, right? So like fermentation, what yeast does, or wood science, the chemistry of what happens inside of a barrel. And I think I want to make sure that people understand as much of the process as they can in a way that doesn't feel like they're being bombarded with, textbook science and, school days of academic literature, but rather the next time they're picking up their glass, they're thinking, oh, I happen to know a little bit more about wood or about yeast or about the process of what's happening in the cooker or, in the still itself or still geometry. It's just one little thing might stick inside their brain as they're taking a sip and thinking, this makes it more interesting. This makes it more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And I have one more question for you today. You've also written YA fiction. So which was more challenging for you, writing fiction or essentially writing your own story with this book?
Yes, I have discussed this with my agent many, many times during the process of writing this memoir. And I said, I am not going to be writing nonfiction any longer. It is so difficult to do a proposal, which takes, for me, it felt like it took a lot longer than writing the book, which took 20 years. But, writing fiction is so great because you get to lie for a living.
Right. Right. It doesn't matter if it's factual. Nobody can check.
You have to be convincing enough. Rather,
right.
If it's going to be fantasy, you just have to test the laws of physics enough so that people can suspend disbelief for a tiny bit of time. That's it.
Very cool. Well, Shelley, I think people are interested. They want to follow the journey. They want to get the book. They want to read more that you've done. So tell us a little bit about where people can find you and follow everything that you got going on.
Yeah, we have an incredible PR team here at Reservoir and also through Pegasus, who are my publishers. So if you want to know anything about the book or the book tour that we're going to be doing that starts in June, you can go to reservoirdistillery.com. You can purchase the book there. You can learn about the book tours and, definitely come visit us because we'd love to see you. And otherwise, you can go to Pegasus Books and up in New York. And, Simon & Schuster is the distributor. So you will find it in everywhere you find books. Go to your independent bookseller and help those people out because they're, desperately in need of some support, some love.
Very cool. Where's the tour going? Is it traditional, those bookstores you were just talking about, or is it bars? Is it distilleries? Where we're going to find it?
Yeah, it's rather untraditional in nature, and it's still forming just because we're getting so much great interest. But we're doing bookstores, we're doing podcasts, we're doing live stream events, we're doing pubs, and it's up and down the East Coast. And potentially Texas. We're looking at going to London, and then even Australia, or all of the UK, and then Australia as well. So stay tuned. Every day something else pops up, and we're like, can we fit this into the schedule? And I'm like, yes, we can. So
very cool. Very cool. Well, if you make it through the Midwest and you're in St. Louis, please stop by my place, the ABV Barrel Shop, the world's only single barrel shop in the world. That's all we sell, single barrel picks that we do at our shop. It will be open in July. It's not open just yet. But
that's fantastic. We will be in Missouri, so not too terribly far away. We'll be in Kansas City for one of the City,
just the other side of the state. So yeah. Come on by. Head over to St. Louis. Heck yeah. All right, we'll wrap this one up as we always do by talking about where people can find us. McNew, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at McNew ABV.
All right, for me, I'm an easy guy to find. I'm at Steve Akeley on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. I've got a website, steveakeley.com. Of We've also got a company website. That thing's abvnetwork.com. Check it out because everything that we do is out there. Previous shows, blogs, we put all of our events out there. We've got about 3,000 shows you can download, all original content we've created for you. Check it out, abvnetwork.com. And I talked about the barrel shop. Check out abvbarrelshop.com as well. McNew, anything else to say before we get out of here?
I would like to remind our audience to please give us a 5-star review. That includes comments. It helps new people find the show, which is very important to us. And if you like what we're doing, we ask that you please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/the ABV Network.
All right. Great job. Shelley, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks to both you both. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Shelley.
Absolutely. Get out there and buy that book. Make it a double. Make it a double. Check it out. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Until then, take care, everybody. See ya.
Bye.
Peace. Before we finish the show, let's talk about some great companies that support the ABV network. First up is Moonshine Still Pro. Moonshine Still Pro has a full line of products to help the home distiller. Whether you want to experiment on the stove in your kitchen or you're looking for a bigger setup in your backyard, owner Russell Creed and his team can help. They have multiple still offerings, accessories, and even grain from their partners at Goldstone Mill to assist you in making whiskey on par with your favorite distillery. They can also help you with some fabricated parts you probably can't make yourself if you are attempting a DIY still project. Learn more or order your still or parts at moonshinestillpro.com. Another friend of ours is the Goldstein family at Goldstone Mill. The Goldsteins offer a variety of heritage and heirloom grains to make the finest whiskeys in the world. Plus, they are more than just a grain company. They are truly consultants to make sure the grains they are providing to you or your business meet your highest expectations. Additionally, they work with mills around the country, ensuring shipping is as low as possible for their customers. If you're a distillery, brewery, or even doing this at home, Goldstone can assist you. Check them out at goldstonemill.com, call them at 217-254-6613, or check in via email at hello@goldstonemill.com. Last but not least is the ABV Barrel Shop. While we don't get to play in the allocated bourbon game because we aren't selling the other products you have to do to get those, we do have access via our friendships in the bourbon industry to some really cool stuff. Have you ever seen your favorite craft distiller selling some really cool limited offerings only in their gift shop? I'm talking things like the Hazmat offering Distillery 291 did for their 10th anniversary, or Neely Family Distillery's upcoming Papaw's birthday barrel. They don't have enough of it to send it out to distributors, so they only sell it via their gift shop. Well, companies like Distillery 291 and Neely Family Distillery have agreed to sell us 2 or 3 cases of these offerings moving forward, meaning our store will have the access to some of the rarest whiskeys in the world. Way more difficult to come by than the allocated bourbon offerings with the national release. Yes, they will be extremely tough to come by, but if you're a customer of our store, you'll have a chance to get them. Get signed up for our email or text list over at abvbarrelshop.com so you don't miss out.
The Bourbon Daily is part of the ABV Network. For more information or to become a sponsor, please visit abvnetwork.com. Thanks for listening and cheers.
This has been a Steve Akeley production.